Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Crown Unfiltered, the internet's premier car design podcast. This week we are doing something a little bit different. We're speaking to a gentleman that is a hot rod designer slash pinstripe artist. I'm talking about none other than Chris Dunlop, aka Pinstripe Chris. You've definitely seen his work online, and if you haven't, just type in Pinstripe Chris and you'll see it. He's incredible, absolutely credible and incredible. Chris is an independent hot rod designer slash artist based out of Orange County, I believe, West Coast, West Side, in the United States of California. And what can I say? He does that chip foos, hot rod, airbrushing, just gold that I lusted over a lot in the past and always wanted to know how to do it. And it turns out there is no shortcut but hard work. Chris is completely independent, as I said. He is self-taught, and he is an incredible artist. Incredible story, and I thoroughly enjoyed talking to him. I think there is a lot to be learned from his story about just making it happen for yourself, and not just making it happen, but producing the most insane work possible just by grinding it out and really mastering your craft without anybody showing you how to do it. All the tools are out there. Go and learn. Go and check out Chris. Much respect. Dude, I fucking hell. I thought you, because I saw you did a demo. Did you do a demo of that car?
What do you mean?
Like a sketch demo. Did you?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
I don't know if I've done this particular model. I've drawn a lot of Ferraris. I'm not sure I've drawn this one.
Right. Okay. Wow, dude, it's beautiful. It's awesome. And you've got a Beetle as well, right?
Yeah, I've got a Roadster. Yeah.
A Roadster. Cool. Dude, listen to me. I have to tell you, I'm a big fucking fan of your work. Like, big
that's
time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No, really, amazing. I'm sure you get it all the time, but it's mind-blowingly brilliant. Really, really impressive.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Are you, I have to ask, I heard like that you're kind of self-taught. Is that right?
I'm completely self-taught. I actually never went to college or art school or anything.
Dude, that's absolutely insane. So how did you start?
It's a bit of a long story, but I used to do auto body and paint for a living. That's what I actually used to do. I actually used to work on cars. I did that for about 10 years before I switched over to art full time. But I've been drawing cars since like middle school. It's always something that I did and I enjoyed, and I tinkered with pinstriping and airbrushing a whole lot during the actual painting cars time. And eventually, when we moved to California, just realized that there was kind of a need for stuff on the artwork side that was just car drawing, and it was just an easier way of life than being in a shop every day sanding cars and spraying cars.
And you literally, like, you taught yourself everything. Nobody showed you like how to use an airbrush. Nobody showed you how to lay out the marker strokes first.
So I guess having a background in painting actual cars, airbrush is sort of self-explanatory. The tool is kind of the same as a paint gun, except it's greatly reduced. And I've been airbrushing for many, many, many years. Just more like custom graphics on cars, not just specific illustration. Markers was something that took a long time to figure out and get used to. And when I was getting into it, there wasn't a whole lot of YouTube stuff yet. We're still kind of 10 years ago, we're still in the era of people kind of hanging on to their secrets. With social media, a lot of that stuff is just kind of out in the open now, which is great. You know, it's just, It's silly to kind of gatekeep like that. So there was really no one to turn to for that type of stuff. So it was really just trial and error. I've got just hundreds and thousands of drawings that are just awful because that's what it takes to figure out how to use the tools. There's no other way.
I mean, I played around a little bit with an airbrush at college, and well, I studied in the UK, and in the
Oh,
UK,
nice.
college is not actually university. It's like a pre-access course to what you guys would
Oh,
call
wow.
college. But
Okay, interesting.
anyway, yeah, it's just called something different, but it's yeah. And they got like I was fascinated at the time. American Hot Rod was on cable, so I was watching a lot of that,
Nice.
Chip Foose and all that
Of
sort of stuff.
course,
And
yeah.
I was just fascinated by that, and I so desperately wanted to learn how to do that. And of course, it was a big disappointment when somebody brought in like an airbrush, and I just made a mess on the page. It was just such a anticlimax.
Yeah, I can understand that too. I also grew up watching overhauling as well. And so,
Overhauling, that was it.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
exactly right. And I love watching, obviously, for the whole show. My favorite part was that 2 minutes that they got down to the drawing and the rendering. That was my favorite
I
part.
know. Yes, yes,
As much as I
yes,
like the
yes.
cars, it was really the whole reason to watch the show was to watch the drawing. And sort of funny, I had this misleading idea, just I guess because I was a kid and I was kind of dumb, that that was more or less how fast the art process actually was. So I always use that as the benchmark for if I'm not going fast enough, if I'm not doing it at that pace.
Wow. But do you? But it seems like you work pretty fast, though,
I
right?
work really fast, yeah.
And do you think that watching that program had a lot to do with that?
It's certainly something. Working in the automotive industry, you get used to fast pace, late nights, early mornings. It's just everything has to be done yesterday, and you never start until the day before. So that's pretty normal, especially on large builds. But efficiency is just a really, really important thing in that world. And that doesn't mean I'm always doing it right. But yeah, definitely watching the show had a big influence in the way that you think about pacing and time. Again, when you're a kid, you don't know that it's sped up and it's chopped up into 100 pieces. And but even that's not to say Chip obviously works very, very fast. Um, but it's kind of interesting to look at things from that point of view of, it must only take, a few minutes to do these. And there's stuff that he can do within a few minutes for sure. But to kind of create that as an idea in your head, like, unless I'm doing it this quick, then I'm not doing it as fast as the professional guy. So until I get there, I'm not done practicing.
Wow, dude, that's some powerful shit. I mean, that's no, I mean that's it's really really powerful because I mean, while you say like okay, you might not always do it right. I mean, most of us don't do everything right, but I guess the difference is like you've got a kind of a fail fast
Mm.
mentality almost.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think when you're trying to learn anything, especially without any real assistance, again, nowadays with social media and YouTube, we have so much more information available to us, which is awesome. But the only way to get good at something is to fail at it, and the faster you fail at it, the better. So if I can knock out 8 or 10 drawings in a day, then I will learn a whole lot more than if I hang up the pens after the first one goes wrong, because there's no doubt that stuff's going to go better some days and worse some other days.
Yeah.
It's life. It's not just art. It's just the way life is. So the faster you can kind of cycle through it, the faster you can fail through it, I guess, and take notes of all those things. And the more you do in volume, the more you can apply to the next one. It's fresh in your mind. Okay, this time I'm going to do it this way, or that didn't work, or
Right.
yeah. So the fresher the information is, which means the higher volume you go through it, the more you can kind of apply to the next one.
Chris, how many underlays do you normally do like before you do your final piece?
It depends on.
Because you see the of course, I mean you've been very transparent in your workflow process, but if you watch one of your YouTube videos or the long format, you
Yeah.
see the whole thing from beginning to end, which by the way is absolutely amazing that you do that. I mean it's just incredible. And of course, you know what we see on Instagram is just those like those those 2 second highlight reels
Yeah,
that
exactly.
are the things that unfortunately, you know, those are the things that get all the engagement.
That's what people
But
wanna
I
see. Yeah.
exactly they want to see that polished magic, yeah, and then we see and we see those final beautiful like you know line drawings that are just so perfect, and I would look at that and go like, there's no ways I could ever do that.
Well, it's all possible. Definitely, I think if somebody like me can figure out how to do it, then anybody can. If you've got kind of that determination behind you. And to me, honestly, the long format YouTube stuff is probably to me seems really really boring. But I think about if I was the young artist and I was looking for the information, I don't want it sped up. I just want to watch it in real time. So it's really more for the other artists out there that are just trying to see the process a little bit for what it really is, not the sped up Instagram version
Yeah.
that glazes all over the important parts that somebody might skip. But to answer your original question
Yes.
about underlays, some drawings I'll do the rough sketch and then the final line work straight over the rough sketch on that page, and just let the rough sketch kind of breathe through it because I think it looks
Oh,
kind of
wow.
interesting.
Okay.
But that's
Yeah, yeah,
provided that the
yeah,
rough
yeah.
sketch is like ballpark. So if on
Yes.
that, yeah, I would say probably a rough sketch, especially if I'm going to do something nice. I'll do a rough sketch on a separate page and then I'll underlay it probably once. If it's a car I'm really, really not familiar with, I might change mediums a little bit to give myself a little bit more room for error, so I'm not just burning through paper.
I I mean, what's also amazing as well is that like everything that you see, like in your work, the perspective always seems to be completely bang on. But I guess you probably look at it and you only see the faults.
Well, certainly people in my comments also see all my faults, so it's so
Oh,
great
really?
that
Yeah. Well, there's always some
yeah.
smart ass in there, isn't there?
Yeah, that's okay. That's just the way these things go. That's what social media is at the end of the day. But I like drawing stuff from kind of weird, unusual perspectives. I've never been of the mindset that my job is to print out a photo exactly the way that somebody provided to me. That sort of defeats the purpose of my job overall. Like, if I'm an artist, I should translate in a way that I think is interesting. And I think
Right.
it brings something fresh to look at when you're drawing stuff in a way that that nobody else is. Hopefully, just a different perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I Chris, how long would you say? I mean, I know you said you've been drawing for a long time, but when you decided that you wanted to start doing these like marker renderings with airbrush and everything, presumably there's a period where like you feel I'm not getting any traction. Like, how long did it take for you to get to a point where you felt like I can almost do this? Like now it seems you can do it mechanically. Like you're not having to think. You are literally just executing almost. I mean, that's how it feels like. It seems like you're making like a split-second decision, like, okay, I'm gonna put the horizon line here,
Yeah.
and it's gonna require some airbrush over there, and there's not much dwelling on am I gonna mess this up? You just do it mechanically.
Well, hopefully I get lucky more times than not. Sometimes you miss a couple of lines, but the nature of artwork is just figuring out how to work with the mistakes as you go rather than freaking out about the whole thing. To be honest, I think my background in painting actual cars for a living kind of shortcutted a lot of the stuff that would have had to learn in a really fundamental way. I already understood color contour and shading and reflections because I spent 10 years learning to make things shiny and pretty. So it was really more learning how to use the tools, less than how to make it look the way I want. It was how to make it look the way I want using these really convenient tools to speed things up. Because you could do everything with an airbrush or acrylic paints or oil paints, but I find that process to be a little bit slow, especially if I'm making something just for the sake of like Instagram or content, which I do pretty much every day. And I want that process to go as fast as possible.
But in terms of like working out how to construct a rendering, I mean, you talked about your experience within painting cars, actual cars, was helpful to that. How do you make those two connections?
I guess I never really thought of them as separate because you're kind of taking information in the whole time, especially in the nature of like custom paintings where we're doing like flakes, pearls, or candies, where there's so much more dramatic color shift on the contours, and that's kind of something that gravitates us towards these colors or these shapes. So I never really thought about that there was a disconnect from one to the other. It was just, is the tool that I'm using the best way to get there, or do I know how to get there? I've never really thought about how I would put one together, or what the starting point to the ending point was. Because I mean, in all honesty, the type of artists that I followed were really great references for style or placement in general. You kind of look at somebody else's artwork and kind of go, I like that, it works. Maybe in process I'll learn how to do something a little bit differently. But yeah, I never really thought about the distance from point A to point B too much. Just it's faster just to get going and see what happens.
But were you? I mean, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're painting a car, for example, and you talked about the intense color transitions and the contrast and the depth in the color,
Yeah.
and the flakes and all that sort of stuff, that's a very detailed thing, right? And then to construct a rendering, you've got to almost zoom out a little bit and go, okay, putting the marker down, I've got to kind of choose a horizon line, and
Yeah.
then to indicate a soft fender, I'm going to put a strip of airbrush over there. And then, of course, in the beginning, you probably experience this a lot, I would hope, because otherwise you are superhuman. That you tend to put down too much in the beginning, and you quickly just put in too much on the page, and then it's almost flat.
Yeah. Yeah, that can happen pretty easily. And same if you were airbrushing the whole thing. And again, I think kind of going back to watching like some overhauling clips, you could tell even going back that far, you kind of go, okay, you're working light to dark. You have to be incremental. Right away, you sense that markers is just like watercolor. It's a little bit at a time. Don't shoot for opacity. Don't
Okay.
shoot for solid color blocks. But I knew that instinctively going in. You could take a cap off a marker in an art store and make a couple of passes and kind of go, all right, this is how these work. I know if I'm going to do a red car, I don't want to color the whole thing in red because then it's just a coloring page. Yeah, like I said, I've never really thought about the distance between the two because I don't know.
I mean, it's
I
just
guess,
like communicating those soft forms as well. Like,
yeah,
honestly, if I guess if I sat down long enough, or if I tried enough times, I would probably get to the point where I might be able to get a line drawing where I'm half happy with. But I
nice.
promise you, the minute I get to the point of applying color, I will have like a panic attack and think like I'm gonna screw this up. And
That's where it can all go
I've
wrong.
like, I mean, I look at some of the things that, like, especially your very detailed stuff, like where you are. There were a couple of paintings that you did where you, like, for example, zoomed in on the corner of a rear light,
Yeah,
and you end up like all this crazy amount of detail in the reflections and everything, all the information's there, but it's not too much. And I would never know. I'm sure when you get like maybe halfway through it, it's kind of, it's instinctive what to do next. But that starting point for me is just like I wouldn't know where to start. I just
I
would not know where to start.
I guess if you think about it as a starting and stopping point, it's always hard to figure out where to get started, right? So just kind of jumping in
Right.
is the best way. And I don't oftentimes have a specific goal when I set out to do something, except just to do it. So I don't 100% know what anything's going to look like. I'm just picking colors, and the style kind of unfolds. I just kind of let things happen the way that they will. And it'll either work out or it won't. But in everything that I do, I make up my own lighting and color contour as I go. I don't use references for color or lighting because I find that stuff to be really distracting and noisy. I kind of want what I do to look a certain way. So rather than be stuck to a photo of something, I just kind of want to make the light glide a certain way all on my own.
I totally get that. But I think we would all like to do that. The difference is that you are actually doing it, and the
I'm
rest of us
trying.
can only dream of it.
Well, sometimes it works better than others. So, you don't want to give me too much credit there. I win some, lose some. It happens. I don't share the ones that don't go well.
No, fair enough, fair enough. But Chris, how can you just explain like why when you were, for example, doing a marker rendering, why you would put the dark colors in first?
Why? I would put the dark colors in first.
Yes.
I would depend on the color. I would rarely jump in with the darkest first. If a paper is white, so everything you do from that point on creates contrast, I would rarely jump straight into the darkest stuff because you create too much contrast too quick. So I like to go light to dark a little bit. But with familiarity of certain colors like a dark blue or really dark red or black, you can kind of jump in. If you just kind of have the process memorized a little bit, the way the color contour happens is sort of memorized. It's just a little bit systematic, but otherwise, I tend not to jump into dark colors too quick because that's where it can kind of go wrong. You lose the room for error at that point. when you go too far too quick. So I like to kind of gradually bring everything to where I think it should be and get darker and rich in the colors. Otherwise, it can kind of get hard to balance the details if you go too aggressive too quick.
But what about like tires and shadows? Like that's something that you see being done first quite a lot. I mean, it maybe
not by me.
Okay.
No,
okay.
never. I always save that for last.
Okay, all right. That makes sense.
That actually confuses me that people do that. To be perfectly honest.
Well, yeah, that's why I was asking, because I for me that makes that's not the way that I would do it personally, because it seems for the reasons you've just mentioned. Actually, that's why I asked. So yeah,
everybody ends up at their own end result. Obviously, the people that I'm thinking of, their artwork comes out beautiful regardless of how they start or finish. I've never thought about, something that Steve Stanford said once to me was, doing the rendering the way that a car is built. You don't just start with the wheels and the ground. It's a body by itself before it's planted on wheels. And honestly, I kind of like to think of it as room for error as well. If the body doesn't go well, then at least I haven't concerned myself with the wheels or the shadows or anything. It could be a little bit of a shortcut.
Details of rims and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Why bother with the hard stuff if I can't get the body right? So, in case I need to start over, which does happen from time to time. Oops, sorry. In case I need to start over, which does happen from time to time, I just would prefer to know that I hadn't wasted all the time detailing wheels and tires yet, because in my mind, setting myself up for failure. It's different if you're starting from a specific reference and you know what your target is. As long as I get really close to this photo, then you can start anywhere. You could go from left to right and you'll get there. But because I'm not, the process is a little bit of a jog and a walk and a slow down. It's a little bit of everything. So because I don't have that room for error, knowing that this is the exact result that I'm going to get comparing to a photo, I have to have a little bit of space in there to pull the plug within a short amount of time and go, okay, let me try this one again a different way. Being like, well, at least I did a good job on those lug nuts. Like, that serves me no good whatsoever.
Well, Chris, do you ever, you mentioned already that a lot of stuff does end up in the bin. Do you ever get to a point where you 3/4 of the way through and you're nailing it, everything's going well, and then right at the end you screw it up? Do you then go straight back in and redo everything from scratch, and recreate exactly what you've done on a new page?
I can't even remember the last time that happened. If I'm going to make a mistake, it's going to be pretty early on. Well, okay. My follow-up is, if I make a mistake, it's pretty early on. Starting with a marker that's dead or dying or contaminated, like that first few streaks, you're like, okay, done, crumple up the paper and start over. That really doesn't happen at the end of the process. It's usually the beginning stages that are the roughest, because you're starting from a blank page and you're like, I don't know how this is going to go. So everything is very substantial right away. But as you build on something, there becomes so much more room for error. Once you've got the body red in or the body blue in, you got some line that's a little stray here. All right, mix up some acrylic paint at the end, touch up that line. It's not that big a deal. If it happens early on, it's harder as a touch-up because it's really a glaring error at that point. So sometimes I'll get lines that are stray or something like that. My renderings tend to be a little bit on the clean side, so it's not like I'm worried about tree reflections and there's a person in the background that I get their face expression right. That's really not a part of my artwork, so I don't really have to worry about that so much. But yeah, if something strange happens towards the end, I've learned over time that the way that I make mistakes, and I make plenty, is also just a part of who I am as an artist, and I just let that be. Early on, I just wanted to correct every single little thing, and the pursuit of perfection, I found, sterilizes the artwork a little bit. Let there be some errors, because that's kind of who we are as people. Granted, I will say, wheels do have to be round. If the wheels aren't round, we're not really working on a car.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it depends. Some designers, they put just X's in place. It's but it's you'd be surprised. You'd be so surprised. I think in a design studio, it's you'd be so surprised at what some of the sketches look like. And it's not to say that those sketches are wrong. You know, sometimes it's like there might be the crudest little sketch that sparks a whole theme, you know, that
Totally.
everybody gets really into. And
Yeah.
I but my God, like I tried relentlessly to do the stuff that you do now at
Oh, that's interesting.
at university, and I just and all through like college as well, especially, you know. But there was nobody really. Well, I've got no excuses because you basically taught yourself, but like I just couldn't do it. It used to drive me crazy, absolutely crazy. Trying to get the ellipses right. I don't know if you
Mm.
know Scott Robertson, um, and he's got he was him, and there's another guy called Harold Belker, and there's a couple of other people, but there were a series of these tutorial DVDs that we had in university,
No kidding.
and yeah, and that was they, you know, they were also, a lot of their craft was based on the sort of stuff that you do, but just like really beautiful, precise volumes communicated correctly. And it used to drive me crazy. Like I'm a 3D guy primarily, so
Oh, nice.
I don't really draw that much. I'm a digital modeler. So I studied car design. I wanted to be a designer, but I just didn't get those skills. So I, you know, I stuck with 3D basically. But yeah, dude, I'm mesmerized by the stuff that you do, and as you said, you know, with overhauling as well. Back in the day, I used to like wait for those last 2 minutes of the whole program.
Yeah.
It was my favorite part of the program.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. Even today, even yesterday, I was watching like a 30-minute compilation on YouTube of Foose renderings. I think it was overdubbed in Spanish as well. And I'll still, as inspiration, have stuff like that on in the background because it's kind of funny now with a little bit more experience to be like, all right, he's using vellum on that one or letraset paper on that one, or just kind
Okay,
of picking it
right.
apart a little bit, not in a bad way, just kind of going, you can get those effects by using these types of papers, or you know, somebody's technique changes as time goes on. And as you find out in the high volume industry, that's for sure, the tools that you're going to use are also based on how the window of time that you need to produce something, you know, how quickly does it need to be done with what level of accuracy
Yeah.
will change how you approach it, which is really cool to kind of see unfold in real time on a show like that.
Very, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, there's a hell of a lot to be said for the topic of speed, like you mentioned early on. I think like this, and I think that's how you truly. I mean, especially in the beginning, when you know the whole, you hear it all the time. You know, if you want to get good at something, you've got to practice. You've got to put in your time, and especially with drawing, you've got to draw.
Yeah, it's not attractive advice, but it is true.
It's not attractive advice at all, and it can feel I don't know. It can feel really, really disheartening when you are just sitting there and you can go through like, I don't know, 50 pages or 100 pages and just not, you know, and there's nothing there. It feels like there's nothing there initially. But I think what ultimately happens is that by constantly by doing by working fast over a period of time, you're going to find your natural signature or style in your work, because it doesn't give you any time to start like to analyze somebody else's work and try and copy them verbatim. There's a time
Yeah,
and a place, at least from my point of view, there's a time and a place for that.
yeah,
Um, and it's important to look at, you know, in your case, you know, people like Foose and Coddington and all the OGs. But at some point, you've got to start doing your own thing, and you've got to come up with your own style. And I think that only happens by doing a lot of it, and speed, I guess, probably helps a lot.
in some ways it's got to. Not only will you get through the process of learning a little bit faster, but everybody's kind of hands and arms move a little bit differently. So, you know, the way that you arc your hand
Right,
or wrist
right,
this way
yeah,
is naturally going to create something different. I could sit down and look at a fellow artist piece on Instagram and I could carefully recreate it without a doubt, no matter whose style it is. 100% could. It would be a little bit slower, but it would be more precise. It's just, but that's somebody else's style. And I say that knowing that what I am is an accumulation of a bunch of other artists that I like. But,
Yes.
because you're right, there's a time and place for that to get inspired and kind of see the style of what other people are doing. That's for sure. But when you're kind of, that's why I like doing a lot of things freehand, because there was no way to synthesize that thing. Early on when I was doing, let's say, horizon lines, for example, or blockout lines that go down the side, I might use like ship's curves or rulers because I knew it would be perfect and precise. And of course it will be. But doing it freehand meant I was going to get just a different look to the lines, a different flow, and ultimately something I felt like looked a little bit better. It was less precise, but kind of spoke to me a little bit more. It didn't feel like I was sitting down to a set of tools and just going to do this line one at a time, color this in, this line one at a time. That feels daunting. That doesn't feel like fun. If I can just sit down and wing some markers and kind of end at the kind of result that I'm used to, I'm very happy with that. The more casual it is, the less it feels like work.
Chris, I mean, you hear this all the time, right? Like, in the creative industry, like I'm doing something that I'm for like, to quote a cliche, like I'm living a dream, like I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing my passion. I get the impression with you that you genuinely love what you do. Would you say that that's an accurate statement?
It is definitely an accurate statement. I absolutely love what I do. I wouldn't trade what I do for anything. I've had people suggest that I work for manufacturers or be in-house at custom shops at this point, and there's just no way. I have all the freedom in the world to do the stuff that I want. I have a cool little studio in my own space. Like the freedom is what really, really matters to me. The way I look at it now is I already spent the years working for other people, so I've earned my way to freedom. Why would I want to give that up? I'm having so much fun doing what I'm doing. I'm not wanting for more of anything. Life is good. So yeah, but it's a journey to get there.
And especially today as well, right? I mean, there's so much more opportunity now with social media to have that level of freedom and to put, and to do stuff. I mean, you could do work for anybody anywhere in the world now as well,
Exactly.
which is super interesting. But I like going back to you doing something that you love or your passion. Like it's easy. At some point we are in a skills based trade, right? You learn to get good at a particular thing, and then you can charge money for it, whether it be an employee or on a freelance basis or as a business owner. And I like what can happen over time is that you can become very hung up on just like, I'm not going to do this unless I'm getting paid for it. Whereas I get the impression that you would be doing, like you're sketching all the time, even if it's not work related.
Yeah, I probably spend more time sketching stuff that's not work related than actually work related, which seems sort of backwards, but drawing and artwork is absolutely still one of my hobbies. Even though it's what I do for a living, it's also what I do with my free time, because I always want to make sure that I'm getting better, not worse. And I feel like I've got ideas, whether they're good or bad, that I want to pen and sketch out anyways. But if I didn't have to pay any bills, I wouldn't want to charge anything anyways. I think money hangs over creativity in such a negative way sometimes. Obviously, we all want to get paid for our time, but we're specifically assigning a number to our value, and that can get really, really tricky. Because it can also be kind of a barrier to the quality of work. Somebody saying, hey, can you do this for less, is not inspire you to do better work. It may inspire you to go faster and take more shortcuts. That's not better work. No. So some of the most fun stuff that I've gotten to do was for free, just because I was like, let's just jump right into it. Let's do it. It's fun, because it's more about the enthusiasm or the person that I like working with. That's not to say that I haven't done really cool jobs that I got paid to do. But money can sometimes be this weird barrier in a creative industry, and that ties you to something in a very strange way. It can be a good way, but it's constant. It's good to constantly reevaluate and reassess. Like, is this all going in the direction that I want, or am I just a machine or a robot at this point, just printing out what everybody else wants?
Right. Yeah. Are you how? What is the balance with regard to like commissions and do that you put out that people would maybe buy?
Yeah,
What is
I don't,
what does that look like?
I don't do nearly as many commissions as people think. It's
Okay.
probably something I do very little of. I do work with a handful of builders, some shops here in the States and in other parts of the world as well, where we work on build stuff regularly. I rarely post that stuff. That's really more for them. But I don't do a whole lot of commissions. It really has to speak to me, kind of like, I wouldn't want to do a portrait of everybody's grandmother or something like that, So there's so many different types of cars out there, right? And there's a lot of stuff that I like, and there's a lot of stuff that just really doesn't excite me. And if I'm the person on the other end with the art materials trying to get excited about a project that just doesn't speak to me, it's going to come through in the artwork. So it's important to figure out what to say no to just as well. And as time goes on, there's a lot more stuff that I want to say no to because there's more stuff that I enjoy, and it's more efficient for me to just kind of do what I enjoy and put it out there and sell that. It's risky, but I mean, artwork for a living is risky anyways. But I find a lot more peace in just kind of doing what I want to do and letting the entertainment factor of that kind of come through social media. And it turns out at the end of the day, you can buy that thing that I drew at the for that post or whatever, which is really, really cool. I do like some of the commission aspects as well, but it's a really small part of what I do.
What exactly are people buying from you? Like, are they buying prints, or they're buying original pieces, or both?
Sometimes both. We have a website where people can buy prints. We're not prints of everything. Normally, everything that I post is for sale, or at least the day that I put it up. So whether it's a painting or a drawing or a sketch, maybe 7 out of 10 times somebody buys it that day.
Wow, dude! It's really impressive. I mean, I had a look at your website, and you've got quite a lot of different things. You guys have got merch, which I believe you're wearing as well.
Yes, I am.
And like what does the best? Is it the prints, or the originals, or t-shirts, or what?
It may seem sort of counterintuitive. I mean, a little bit of everything, does add to the pool, but the largest bit is without a doubt originals, and that probably seems counterintuitive to any type of artist that does like paintings or something like that, because there's a lot of time put into it in order to kind of make it sellable or whatever it is. And for me, because I can work really, really, really fast, I do 2 or 3 pieces a day. So if I sell one of them, I'm happy.
Wow.
Plus, it gives me lots of stuff to hang on to so I can do something with later. So because I work in pretty high volume, it means that, not everything is going to hit, maybe not everything people like, but it's just it's a numbers game eventually, because with volume, you will get yeses and nos, of course, but a higher percentage of both just by volume alone.
But it's just phenomenal that you are able to push out that high volume at such a quality. I mean, it's really, really impressive. And I think that it's probably, it's it really is mind blowing. It's very, very, very impressive.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. It's like, I know I've mentioned this already, but the whole, it seems mechanical. Like, Andy Warhol once said, like, there was this, I'm paraphrasing and I'm probably going to get it wrong. I get all these sayings wrong, but there was a Brillo box that he painted, and he was saying like the object was to make your hand like a machine, that you are like, just that there's almost there's no distance, there's very little distance, if any, between your brain and what's leaving the brush. And I'm not suggesting that that's the way that you work, but I think, like, when I say mechanical, I don't mean that there's no soul in it. I mean that it's mechanical in the sense that, like, you have got full, a very high like very high control over what comes out of your hand. So you've just got to think like, oh, I quite fancy doing this, and you can do it.
Yeah, I like that, and I like the freedom that comes with that. I like the collaboration aspect that comes with builders or doing car portrait type of artwork. Those aspects are really, really fun, but there's not as much freedom in that. Someone's kind of telling me what they want, and I kind of have to, thread the needle really, really carefully to not, to make that person on the other end happy. When I'm the person in control of what I'm doing, that's very easy, because all I have to do is what I already know how to do.
Right.
And what I think mine looks good. Doesn't mean that everybody thinks it looks good. It's just, obviously, when you're kind of doing it on your own, it feels easier. I've heard that other artists say that, it would be hard to come up with ideas of what to do every single day. And there was a long time for Instagram that I was posting 5 days a week, brand new artwork every single day, until we switched over to doing more videos and reels, because it's not really that difficult when you're doing a really high volume of artwork. But I think also social media has kind of created this atmosphere of high productivity. You can kind of constantly be in front of eyes that we couldn't before. And that's really kind of where I got my start. Without Facebook and Instagram, none of this would have been possible.
Yeah, it's super, super impressive. I mean, I think if like your average person was doing what you do, or trying to do what you do at the volume, like, they would fucking burn out. But as I said, like, I genuinely get the impression that that's like you'd be doing that regardless, and whatever you post is just kind of like a documentation of what you're already doing, right?
To some degree, yeah. Like I said, I don't really post a lot of like shop work necessarily, but it's all same category. It's still car design and renderings and stuff like that. I think at the core, I feel like I'm a really kind of hardcore car person. So even if you were to take the artwork away, I'd still love going out for a drive. I don't do a whole lot of car shows or stuff like that, but because I like cars, it's kind of always in my mind. It's always something that I'm interested in thinking about. So drawing is just kind of that bridge that kind of keeps me engaged with that side of passion all the time, short of wrenching and sanding and painting. Those are aspects that I like too, but drawing is like, it's low impact. I can take a tiny little notebook with me anywhere and do something and feel like I'm kind of participating.
Cool.
Yeah.
Chris, can you tell me a little bit about the process with working with a builder? Like, what does that look like?
You guys do much of that type of stuff there? Is it, I've always wondered if it's similar working with an OEM or a car manufacturer versus a builder. It must be similar minus the bureaucracy, I assume.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll keep it very, very brief. There aren't really, not to my knowledge anyway, that many hot rod builders at least not in Germany. I mean, strangely enough, there is like a bit of a American muscle car scene over here, and
Nice.
and there's a huge appreciation for it. But in terms of actual builders, I mean, there's the place to be is where you are. There's definitely nothing on that scale over here, or anywhere near that over here.
Oh,
But
wow,
in terms of but as I said, there are a lot of people importing American cars over here, and I mean, they're very popular, and they're like a lot more expensive than over there, obviously.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty mad. But like, in terms of the process in an OEM is like, in short, to oversimplify it, it's basically designer comes up with a sketch, he brings it to me, we work out a volume based on what's on the page, and it's kind of an interpretation. There's no, it's like you don't get given a blueprint. It's in the beginning, like you sketching a volume in the same way that you would sketch a sketch.
Yeah.
And then we would use that data to mill a clay, and then the clay modeler would slick that down, and then they would usually scan that, send the digital scan back to us, and we would resurface it. And that can sometimes have a couple of loops, and eventually you get to the end product. And along the way, you would obviously use the same data that you would use milling for, to also do animations and renderings and all that sort of stuff. And there's a visualization department for that. But that's roughly the process in a very simplistic view.
Gotcha. Well, it's not hatefully far removed in the custom car side. It's just a little bit more. It's a little bit more one-to-one, I guess you could say. So a builder might say, here's the year, make, model that we're starting with. Here's our list of modifications. I try to keep our modifications list just to aesthetics. The stuff that I can't see doesn't help me think about how to do the design any. And granted, a lot of what I get to participate in isn't really heavy modification. It's more like facelift. So it's not quite the legwork of designing an entire car from scratch. Occasionally, but not often. Usually it's just how do we finesse the details or make a classic a little bit more contemporary, or the other way around. How do we pull in some Italian influence on an American design or something like that? So a builder will say, here's the car that we're starting with, your make, model. Here's maybe the wheels, stance, size. Here's the range of kind of visual ideas. Use this car for inspiration or use this interior as inspiration. I'll do some rough sketches, send it over to them, get feedback, revise the sketches, feedback, revise sketches until we get into final render. If it's something that I know really, really well or doesn't have a lot of design heavy lifting, I can go straight into final render and just finesse from there.
Wow. And ultimately the final render, would that then be like a North Star that everybody would follow verbatim? Like, would they try and execute it to exactly what that image looks like?
At least as close as possible. The kind of the one-to-one that I alluded to in the custom car world is the fact that at the end there's metal fabricators and there's in every shop. And my goal really is to give them the best inspiration moving forward. Since I'm not hands-on at the shop taking measurements or dimensions, it's really up to the fabricators. They're the real craftsmen that take the drawing inspiration and figure out how to make that into their thing. In my job to leave the rest of the craftsmen space to do their job.
Okay.
So I'm really
so that's a big differentiator between like what your line of work and then what like OEM life is like, because a designer would typically follow that through certainly through the digital process, but then especially then what the real boring part, and which is like where real design the real design happens in terms of like actually producing something that can be manufactured. There's like a the developing the theme is like maybe a year, and then there's like 3 years of production stuff that you've got to go through afterwards. And it doesn't always happen, but in some rare instances, the designer that comes up with the sketch develops the theme in a concept phase, and then that's kind of solidified, and then they go through the production phase, which is like another 3 years or whatever the case is, and they are literally in meetings all the time, like saying like negotiating A-pillar positions and like can we move door mechanisms up and down, left and right, etc. And that's that becomes, I mean, I've never done that. That's not what my job is. And honestly, there's,
thank goodness,
thank God. Like, it's just, it would drive me insane. And I just, I've got no interest in doing any of that shit anyway, but some people have to do it. And
some people probably love it, to be honest.
And some people love it as well. And that's, and ultimately that's the thing that, it's rare that a designer will come up with a theme and take it all the way to the end. But when they do that, they can like confidently say, like, I designed this. Our world is full of people claiming that they did shit that they didn't actually do.
Same in mine.
Oh, dude, it's so bad. It's so, and I mean, when I look at it, it makes me cringe so much. I mean, I feel embarrassed for the person making those claims, because if somebody somewhere is either going to pull them up, or like you've got an army of people knowing full well that you didn't do
Yeah,
shit,
exactly.
you know? And I just think how can you really, are you really proud of yourself? Or like, there's no ways that I could do it anyway. So
Yeah, that's just
yeah,
ego there. That's just, and that's waste of energy. What
it's
I
just,
like about the hot rod custom car community is that the entire process is collaborative. So you never, I might be the
that's
guy
cool.
that's drawing, and hopefully I
That's
feel
cool.
like I'm somewhat in charge of the design. But at the end of the day, it's the builder's name's on it, not necessarily mine. And I'm not after
Right.
having my name on it. I'm just happy to be a part of it because I
Yes.
appreciate it on early on that it's collaborative. It's not, we're building a Chris Dunlop build. Yeah, maybe one day we'll get there with some time, but it's not what drives me. But to kind of clarify the point of sort of the custom car design, the real benefit of starting with an existing platform, of course, is you do have some basic math that you're already starting
Right.
with.
Right.
So if I am overlaying like a rear of a truck, I do a lot of classic trucks, and I'm going from a photo reference, then I know that the proportions are already spot on.
Right.
And if I'm going to develop a diffuser that fits in this area, there's some spatial relationships there that are just, they're already naturally occurring. How
Yes.
that happens in the fabrication is, the fabricators are put together like a board model or a paper model that's 1-to-1 or 50% of it, and just kind of see how it looks. And they'll make revisions as they go. But like I said, it's important to give everybody the space to be creative as well. Because just because I draw something doesn't mean it has to be that way. Maybe this is the jumping off point for they kind of go, oh, if it integrated this way instead of this way, the way it looks in the drawing, I'm not there. So I think it's better when those calls are made because the people who are looking at it can see that this is better. Do what you think is better. Absolutely.
Wow. Well, you know what? Like, honestly, this is the thing in our line of work. There's like, there are designers that get that where they realize like, okay, well, this guy's got like 20 years of experience and he's a fucking great sculptor. So I'm going to let him do it.
Yeah.
And, kind of, I'm not going to micromanage the shit out of him because actually I'm just going to, there's nothing that I could possibly say to him that's going to improve this section of this body side. Let him build it. And then if you want revisions, come back and say, look, can we change this? Can we change that? But and the other difference I was going to say as well, before I forget, is that all those fancy car sketches that you see of like the final press images, those are all done at the end once the car is done. So just for clarification.
That's
so
funny.
It's not like, some like genius in the corner goes like, oh yeah, I want to do this and this is my vision, and
right.
and then there's an army of minions that just execute that and will like, come hell or high water, they're gonna follow the master's vision like verbatim. It doesn't work like that at all.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't work like that at all.
It's very Hollywood to think that that's how any of this process goes.
Exactly. It seems like the custom car culture is like it's a lot more honest in that respect.
In some ways, I mean, what's there to really hide in artwork? It's not really that big deal. And there's different segments of it. There's guys that do these beautiful 3D models that you really could measure off of, or that really are this great guide for the build. But again, when you're starting from a specific classic vehicle, like you're not really reinventing the wheel to begin with.
Right.
We're hopefully doing something that kind of fits the need of that owner or that builder, but it's not really the same undertaking as building a whole car from scratch. It is physically that, but we're not, when someone says I built this custom 60, or I built a 69 Camaro, the reality is Chevrolet built the 69 Camaro, and we're just tweaking it a little bit. It might be a lot of tweaks, but still, I think Chevrolet should get the credit for that one at the end of
the day. Fair enough. Yeah, no, that makes sense. But are you not having to give like sections or anything like that, like drawing, like saying like I want so
I know what you're asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have to do any of that stuff or not?
Not on every single one. Some of the builders that I work with that are a little bit more detail oriented, or they say, we're just not quite understanding it from the view that you draw in, because I like to draw in these weird views for some silly reason. Okay. So I kind of go, okay, we need to do something a little bit more ortho, a little bit more spot on. give you something that's just some basic clean lines. That's less about the artwork and more about the lines, more about the substance.
Right.
Because sometimes that's where I think there's a lot of beauty in just the line drawings and the sketches, because color can be really, really distracting.
Yes.
It can take your focus away from good or bad ideas. So just having some
Yes.
clean lines to look at is really important. So there are occasions when the need to do something more accurate does arise. It's just not on every single one. Thank goodness, because it is kind of a slow breakdown process. But sometimes it's really, really, really good about an idea, or the builder is like, I think this is going to make sure that my fabricators understand it. So it just kind of bridges that gap a little bit. I don't do it automatically. I might do it if I feel like the drawing just isn't quite conveying it right, or the builder says, can we push a little bit harder on this one, just so that everybody here, because also usually the builders are doing a customer build as well. It's rare that the build is for the shop itself. It's for somebody that's commissioning this vehicle. So getting them on the same page in the process is part of that as well.
Okay. Chris, this is a bit of a business question more than anything else, and I wanted you to shed some light on that slippery slope with regard to making revisions in your work. So you said that you guys, in the beginning, if you're working with a builder, you guys are sending sketches backwards and forwards, and they're kind of saying like, change this, or you revise. Are you quite strict in terms of saying like you're going to get 3 revisions, or how do you take control of that? Because obviously you've negotiated some sort of a fee for your work, and you can quickly end up in a situation where you're constantly just making change after change after change, and he's like, yeah, well, I'm still going to pay you the like $300 or whatever it is
exactly.
for your work. Like, how do you control that?
Yeah, in that worst case scenario, I delete the contact information out of my phone and I move on with my life, because it's exhausting. You're never going to win that scenario.
Okay.
So that rarely happens. I'm really joking. I've had enough experience to kind of gauge where some stuff's going to go, because the first conversation I have on the phone with somebody, just like I am now, and I'll make a list. Kind of just think about like overhauling all over again, where you're sitting down with the insider and he's taking a bunch of notes, and that's where I'll start to get an idea of, oh, this one's a little bit simpler than I think it might be, or this one might be a little bit more complex, so I might need to keep the price in this certain range, because I don't have a fixed number for anything that I do. It's based on scale of job, how far we're going, stuff like that. So in my mind, working with builders, I expect some already as part of the process, and usually I want to let people know that it's usually a benefit. It's usually like, don't need to be stuck on the first drawing is going to be the best one. I want to get as close as possible, but we need to leave some room for error in there. But there's certainly a point where you kind of go, man, I've had builds like this in the last couple of years where it's just like your enthusiasm runs out pretty quick once you've done a million revisions, and you're like, I'm just the guy on the other end of the pen at this point. It's really not fun. The way that I protect myself a little bit with that is I switch mediums. When I work with builders specifically, I do everything digitally.
Okay. So you are using a lot of Photoshop.
Yeah, I specifically, and not in the traditional way that we think about Photoshop. I mean, you're more familiar because you're an artist as well. I have like brushes and marker tools and pen tools that I've designed just for my Photoshop app. So I'll still do, I use a Wacom Cintiq, and Photoshop is just my go-to program because it's just simple. It does everything that I need. Still, obviously done by hand in the same exact process. I'm just giving myself that room for error that I know that I need for the end result or for the sketch. Because if somebody says, hey, the wheel arc is a little bit tall, or you drew the wheels in there too big, there's no sense in doing that pen and paper redrawing it from scratch. Not in 2022. It's just such a waste of time. Yes. So I may do the rough sketch or the initial sketch on paper, photo it, bring it into Photoshop, and clean it up to get to a point where I think is appropriate to send over. But almost all the revisions I'll make digitally, just because that's just the nature of collaboration. There's going to be changes, so I want to work in the medium that allows the most fluidity there, so it doesn't feel like I'm starting over from scratch every single time.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think it almost, yeah, you're totally right. It doesn't make any sense to be working analog in a situation like that.
No.
But do they normally, I guess, working with somebody as skilled as you are, they probably like to also have something they can put on the frame and put in the shop at the end of the day as well. Is that like kind of included in your arrangement, or is every job different?
Every job is a little bit different. Sometimes there's not a need for a traditional render. It's pretty rare that I do a traditional render for a builder anymore, to be perfectly honest, because it's really not the most efficient way to get point A to point B. I still do. It's just not as common. So, but that's why I like being able to make like social media content out of marker and airbrush renderings, because it still kind of keeps me in that realm. And I'm still doing the same thing digitally. It's just a different set of tools, but they just kind of keep me connected in a little bit different way. I learned really early on, and I started doing renderings full time probably about 9 years ago, that that builders aren't necessarily interested in, or not always, I should say, in the artistic vision or process of what the illustration is in itself. There's an efficiency that needs to happen irregardless of how well you draw the palm trees in the background. That is not high priority. So treating the art as the highest priority is kind of a mismatch to what the job is. It's design concept for a builder. So prioritizing that in the best way possible just keeps things moving. Which is why I like to work in a bunch of different mediums and just figure out what suits the job best, versus saying I'm a pen and marker guy only, and treating everything that way would just be such an uphill battle on half the stuff that I do. So, but I like that stuff more for social media because I think it's a lot more interesting to look at than somebody drawing on a tablet.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. Especially in this day and age, it's very satisfying to watch that process, and whether, and as you said, like sometimes the line drawings can be very, very interesting to look at, but it's also very satisfying to watch you apply color to your images as well, and it's just to watch that is a it's a real joy.
Well, thank you. Interestingly, I thought I had started doing digital stuff at the same time as marker and airbrush. I've been doing digital as long as I've done everything else. I just don't post a lot of it because it's just not that interesting. It's really more for the builders, not really for the art side. And early on, when digital was starting to become a lot more prominent, I actually thought for sure that it would sort of take over. But it's interesting to see that digital, while it is definitely the preferred medium for a lot of this stuff, it also kind of elevated the value of traditional as well, just because less people are doing it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But it's so funny, the whole question, there are students that actually in the design world anyway that that are like questioning, like, is the sketch dead? Like, is there any point in us doing a sketch at all? Because ultimately you're selling or you're developing a 3D form. And there is, it is a good question. It's a very good question. I think that the bottom line is that, yeah, that you're right. You are ultimately developing a 3D form. But I think at some level, everything always starts with a sketch, even if it's very, very crude and very simple.
I think you can honestly tell when a car design started without a sketch.
Okay. Yeah. It's probably, it's true. It's true.
Or even in the case of custom cars, there's a lot of don't bother with renderings at all, which is fine. Some people can just go from the hip, and sometimes you can see a build and you just go, if you'd have seen that in a drawing, you would have not done that.
Yeah, it's true. It's
it
true.
happens.
Yeah,
not every idea is a good one.
It's true. Chris, can we dude, just to let you know, I know my face is fucking blown out now, but it's just the sensitivity on my laptop, and it's not correcting, but I am filming with the DSLR, so it doesn't look like that in the recording.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know it's off-putting for you as well, so I'm trying to correct it. It's
all
whatever.
good, man.
Dude, can we talk about social media a little bit, Chris? Because
I'd be happy
to. You've obviously done pretty well on it, and there's a lot of people that don't understand it at all. And can you just tell us a little bit about your journey on there?
Like I mentioned earlier, without like Facebook and Instagram, I really would have never gotten kind of the public momentum. But that's just the world we live in. I was sort of against it early on, but I've been more or less a full-time like social media sharing person from the day I started doing artwork. So about 9 years ago, full-time. And from that point forward, I took it really, really seriously, which is I think something that is a little bit muddy water for some people. When do I have time to post? When do I have time to share? What platform should I be on? There's like a million questions out there, right? And in today's world, everybody has the possibility of being a freelancer, which is awesome. But that means you're in charge of your own marketing at the same time. I don't work with anybody here. You know, my wife helps me out sometimes. The person on the other end of the comments, doing the post, doing the video, doing the edit, doing everything. And I love that because I like being part of that process because I think it's fun. And I like sort of kind of being in charge of my own aesthetic anyways. But I guess I was lucky to early on know that taking social media seriously was actually a big benefit rather than it being passive. So you really kind of get out what you put in. So if you see kind of the volume that I post, and I post less now than I used to because I'm trying to meter quality a little bit, switching over to reels or video is a little bit more of a process than just posting a photo of what you do every day. So you do kind of want to put time into that so you don't become the machine or the robot so quickly. But it is like, I don't know, it's kind of tricky to say. It's like a necessary evil kind of thing because social media can be kind of a wacky dumpster fire sometimes. But it's everybody's free access to share everything that you're doing with the world. I don't necessarily mean, you know, what you're having for lunch that day. More like if you're an artist and you're looking to get out there, there's just no better place and no better time. Like the only thing you're doing wrong is not doing it right now.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's I think like any technology, you know, there's pros and cons to it, you know, but it can completely consume you. It can be really, really consuming and dangerous, and that's, you know, also why I mentioned early on as well, like if it seems like you've got a really healthy spin on it. Like I know you obviously are putting out a ton of content, but it doesn't feel like you are doing it because you feel like you're not creating the artwork specifically so that you can make a post that day. It's rather the other way around, that the post is kind of it's a documentation of what you're already doing, basically.
That's a good way to look at it. In my mind, I think a little bit about like about what I might post the next day or something like that, which I don't tend to think quite that far ahead because I do a drawing and then that's what content is that day. So it's a little bit of a fast thing. There's not a long production that goes into doing something like this. But you know, to some degree, of course, I do think about, all right, tomorrow I'm going to post something. What is it going to be? I better get started on that. You know, but I want to get some feedback from other people, what their ideas are. While I am essentially, especially on Instagram, while I am actually creating artwork just for content, I'm also creating something that somebody can buy. So the social media is just the conduit. It's just a medium, and just kind of adapting to the changes of social media. Of okay, we need to kind of shoot in this format now or this style. Keeps you on the cutting edge, hopefully at least a little bit. So you keep some visibility. So you got to be a little bit fluid with the times, what's working right now and what's not. And you got to try stuff. Stuff's not going to work. Stuff's not going to hit. But at the end of the day, I would be drawing like the Ferrari I posted today. I did it last night. I was going to do it anyways. It's just I've got a phone. Might as well hit record. That's the only difference. So so the being able to post it is a benefit because, you know, hopefully it can drum up some sales or some interest in something like that. But yeah, the social media is just a medium to share this stuff. I'm literally going to sit down and do it. There's a bunch of stuff that I work on every day that never gets shared, never gets posted. So it's not social media isn't like the necessity to do it. It is just where it happens.
Yeah, it's wow, it's pretty mad. But I think it does. Do you find as well that with some, like for example, if you've done a reel on a piece, and that piece ends up being for sale, that people feel it's not just a case of like, oh, we discovered this image and it's cool, we want to buy it, but there's like a stronger connection to that piece that might make somebody want to buy it because they've seen you create it on video. Is there, do you find that at all?
I think having a video version of stuff does kind of, especially like time lapse or final details. That's what I really like for social media, doing more traditional stuff than digital, so that it feels a little bit more substantial. Not that there's any lack of substance in digital, but what I'm selling is something physical. So I want people to have that impression when they're seeing a video anyways, and know that there's a process behind it, that there's a journey from the blank page to the end. And while it may not, may or may not create value, it may change people's perceived interest of what it is. More often than not, stuff like that will motivate someone to message me about doing something specifically for them, something more like a commission, because it seems like, oh, it's possible this guy can draw this car, he can draw this one for me. Because cars are such a personal, emotional experience, it's not likely I'm just going to accidentally draw something that somebody really, really likes. I hope to, but it's more likely somebody wants something a little bit more specific. So, yeah, a little bit of a balancing act there. But I think the video process a little bit, because in the real, like, especially people that understand markers and airbrush, especially on something as fragile as marker paper, it's so delicate. There's so little room for error that the accuracy is something that's interesting about it.
Is there any level of stress when you are doing that for you?
Not in the process of doing it, especially not for me. If, like I said, I'm already going to be doing it. So the difference is, is there?
No, but not. I'm not. Okay, sorry. Not specifically with regard to social media. But is there any level of stress when you are finished putting all the details in and you know that you can potentially screw it up, or do you get so absorbed in the process that you are just zoomed in?
Probably the second one. I really don't worry about messing stuff up towards the end. Yeah, it's not that it doesn't happen, but no, like I mentioned before, I kind of like the little human attributes that come with stuff like that. But
Wow.
I've done, even in whatever short time that I've been doing this, multiplied by the number of drawings I've done per day, I don't make enough big mistakes anymore to even think about it. The hardest part is the line work to me, the actual sketch. Everything from that point on is just color. That's, to me, color is the easy part, because you really have a lot more room to move forwards and backwards. But if you got a bad line drawing, it doesn't matter how much color you throw at it; it's going to look bad.
And do you have fun with it? Like, do you have the most fun with color? Is that when you can kind of relax?
It's certainly kind of a mindless thing. There's in some ways, I know it sounds funny to say that. There's a couple of friends that I usually talk with almost every morning, like on my phone, on my headset, while I'll be drawing or doing rendering. I've done enough of this stuff that I can just kind of flow through. Sketch work is a little bit differently. It takes a little bit more focus to make sure you've got pieces and parts kind of in the right place. But the sketch work actually, to me, is the most fun part, because that's where there's some challenge there. Not that rendering itself isn't challenging, but it's a little bit, I guess it feels a little bit sort of scripted. Like, this is, I'm going to make this car red, I'm going to make this car blue. That process is very much figured out. Creating the line work for something from scratch, from a bunch of terrible references, there's a journey in there. That can be a little bit stressful, just to figure out how am I going to get from this blank page to this view that I want to do. Yeah, that's it.
Wow. Fucking hard. It's just, it's fascinating, Chris. What, can you tell me a little bit about what your average day looks like?
Yeah, definitely. So like, yesterday was almost a better abbreviated version to get in today. So I had social media content today that was, so Instagram, I usually try to post by like 7:30 in the morning. At that time, I had better have done the artwork the night before, unless it's just a pen sketch that I can handle pretty quickly. So my day really starts the night before. So do the artwork the night before so I can film it and edit it so that it's ready to go in the morning, or I'll do the editing in the morning. But the artwork and the general filming, I'll handle the night before. Or for something that's more elaborate. But for a pen sketch, I can just wake up and knock that out. So anyways, wake up, posting content, having coffee. I'm in my art studio already. So, and then usually probably maybe an hour or the first 90 minutes, I'll just kind of be hanging out on my phone, responding to comments and questions. I respond to every comment I get, every message I get. because I think it's really important. I couldn't do what I do with everybody else. So it's important for me to really kind of participate and be engaged in that as well. It's good for social media as well,
Wow.
but but again, I can't do what I do without everybody else. So it's an important part of the whole thing.
Yeah,
So kind of set aside the first couple of hours of the morning just to that, because of the way algorithms specifically work on Instagram, that kind of has a wave that you ride and it tapers off throughout the day. And then I'm also posting on other platforms later parts of the day. So I'll alternate between posting on TikTok depending on which day. Some days I'll also post a photo on Facebook or a different reel on Facebook pages or a shorts version on YouTube of similar type of content that's edited slightly differently or uses a different song, or day before's content, just kind of creating a little bit of diversity throughout the day. So I'm active on 4 to 7 different platforms every single day.
What are the other sorry, Chris, what are the other platforms? Is it Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn? No, Facebook.
Facebook, and Facebook has a personal side and then a pages side, and they're different. They act differently.
Okay.
And then YouTube as well, since they have a space to do shorts now, which is really awesome.
Yes.
So some variety in the middle of there. So social media is obviously a huge part of everything, and but Instagram is kind of like the main hub, and so all that can occupy a good chunk of the morning. And somewhere in there, I'm doing a little bit of drawing, or I'm starting to think about the next day or whatever actual work I'm supposed to do. I usually don't really get started until like 2 or 3 in the afternoon to do whatever I'm supposed to be doing that day. If I've got shop work, which I don't every day, and I don't necessarily work every single day either. Half the time, by the time I get to the middle of the day, the only thing I want to do is just go outside and go get some coffee, go for a drive, go to the beach, something like that. Just an hour to kind of clear the head or something like that, or a couple hours, just whatever. I like to keep the days kind of loose because it's really important to me that my work doesn't feel like a job. And I realize it sounds very, very selfish, but as you mentioned before, you can burn out really, really quickly in a high volume of stuff, especially when you spend as much time on social media. You never want that to feel like work. You want it to feel like it's part of your process. So you have to take control of your day a little bit, which may not always work out really great for the builders that I work with, or some of the deadlines. I always try to make sure that we're meeting deadlines. We don't win everything, but I think it's really important for creative people, artists, musicians, to be as in the moment with that idea, that piece as possible. It's not always possible. So, if something really needs to be done, I'm not going to be like, well, I'm not in the mood, I can't do it today. I'm certainly going to try. I'm going to get started. And sometimes just getting started just pushes you through to that spot where you're like,
I know like things are like ticking over as well for me. So I'm in a space now where I'm always a bit nervous, right? Because I also don't have anything. I don't have a permanent job. So you kind of, and I've got 2 young kids and a family and whatever. So, you're concerned about those things, right?
Of course.
But for the moment, I really can't complain. I mean, things have been pretty good for a while, but there was also a time when they weren't as good as what they are now, and it's difficult in those moments to relax. That's kind of what I'm getting at. It's like you feel you feel like you need to be trying to exhaust every possible opportunity you can in order to kind of make it happen. But I guess that's I don't know, you seem like a pretty relaxed guy. I mean, do you feel that as well? Or were you always just quite good at going, I've done everything I can for the day, I'm gonna go and hit the beach?
I like to think I'm somewhat relaxed, but I like being really, really productive. So hopefully I'm earning that beach time or that drive, whatever that is. And if I'm taking that time, it's so that whatever I do after or the next day, it can be better. It's not, it's not a vacation every single day when you're a freelance artist. There's plenty of pressure and plenty of stress.
Not at all.
But you don't want to let that breathe through what you're doing. You want to come into everything as calm as possible.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. Sometimes when there's less to do, or print sales are down, or shirt sales are down, you're just like, what's going to come along to pick up that slack, or is there something? And I think those moments are really, really good too, because they can really, really focus you on what's important. Because we'll have those down times, and it can be really stressful and really depressing, but it does once you get past the lowest spot of that, it does snap you into focus a little bit. You just kind of go, okay, what is the execution then that I need to take? What's the A to B? Because if I'm just sitting here wallowing, that's not productive. I'm not taking any action.
No.
Is it jobs that I'm doing that I'm not getting done fast enough, or am I taking on the wrong type of work, or there's all kinds of different ways to get. But yeah, we definitely have those low spots every now and then. We're just like, I'm not sure that I'm on the right path, or is this doing enough? But I do like those moments because they are really like self-corrective. You have to be really reflective in those times to kind of take into account what's important to you moving forward. Because if you're at a low spot where you're like, I'm not sure if this is going well, or I'm not doing enough, then that's a really great time to stop doing the things that are not working because they got you to exactly where you are, and just try something else.
Wow, that's really powerful advice. It's really, really good. Chris, have you done any teaching at all?
I have not, but I am actually. Sorry, it's flying here. I am actually going to be teaching a rendering class here pretty soon, actually, for the first time.
Dude, you're doing it, so that's the main thing. But I think you'd be brilliant at it. I think it would be amazing, especially in a live setting. I mean, in that space there. I mean, I can't see the rest of the space, but I imagine it'd be pretty cool to do it over there. Set up some tables, have the Ferrari in the background, and is that what the plan is?
If we were doing it here, that would be cool. We're doing it not far from here at a better location, Coast Airbrush. They're really well equipped to do it, and people do fly in for the classes there, which is really, really cool. So it'll be in person, which is for this type of stuff really, really important. And I've had people ask me about teaching in the past, and I always thought I'm the least qualified person to teach people anything, because if I've learned everything through trial and error, that doesn't mean what I'm doing is right at all.
Yes, but you know what? This is the thing that stops a lot of people from sharing knowledge, and I think that's it's easy to get hung up about not being a qualified teacher. But the thing to remember is that it's not there's a lot of truth in that, like, those that can do and those that can't teach. Not always the case, and it's also disrespectful, I think, to a lot of educators. There's some great educators out there, but I would rather personally be taught by somebody like yourself that has got this amazing ability than somebody else that is qualified to teach, but is maybe not able to do the thing that you want to learn.
Yeah,
so,
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like these at the end of the day, even a professional curriculum is basing the curriculum on what other experts have done in the past. Yeah. So what's right, what's wrong at the end of the day. You have got a pretty exceptional skill, and there's clearly a market for it. And a lot of people would want to know how to do that. So I think that's all that needs to be done. Plus, you live in fucking America, which is the land of opportunities. And that's like the whole country is built on that sort of initiative. So I wouldn't let any of that shit get in the way.
Oh, good to know. I'll keep that in mind. I'm excited about it. I think teaching is a lot of fun. I love doing the live demos and being able to answer questions in real time. Because there's a lot of great questions. There's clearly a lot of people that want to know stuff. Not always sure that what I'm sharing is valuable, just because the way I got there is a little bit unusual. But I like that.
That is the value. That is the value. That is the value.
Maybe so.
Because like the thing is, like, think about some kid in, I don't know, Africa, and he doesn't have access to Art Center. He doesn't have access to Chip Foos. He wants to know, what can I do on my own without those institutions? And you've done it on your own. And there's a lot of value in that.
I see what you're saying. That's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It sounds better from an outsider than when I'm thinking about it in my head. That's for sure.
That's what you need to focus on. That's what you need to focus on. So how many people are going to be in this class?
I'm not sure yet. We're still taking, people are still enrolling. I don't think it's intended to be a large class, because we just have to be conscious about space and distance. And also, being that's my first one, I wouldn't want to have like 1 million people.
Sure.
end up being overwhelming. But so I'm not totally sure yet. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, Chris, I listen. No. Before we wrap up, I need to just ask you: Have you met Chip Foose?
Yeah, we worked on a build together actually.
What?
Yeah, I doubt that he would remember me from that. But yeah, it was because it's not like I did the build running or anything. It was the first and only shop that I worked at when we moved to California. I only worked at one shop before I decided I was done here, and just moved on to artwork. And at the end of my time working at that shop, we did a SEMA build with Chip Foose for MagnaFlow.
Wow. What was that like?
It was cool. I mean, the way that some of this stuff happens isn't as glamorous as it seems like on TV.
No, fair enough. I
Yeah.
bet. Yeah.
Yeah, not in a bad way. Just like it's not like we saw him all the time or anything like that. You know, where the truck was being built versus somebody like him who's in demand all the time. You know, his participation in it was separate from ours. You know, so it's not like we overlapped a whole lot, but enough, you know, to communicate and say hey. And you know, my shop is, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles away from his. We're down the street. Most of the people in the kind of the hot rod community aren't that far.
That's fucking nuts, dude. And were you like were you starstruck at all? Or was it just like
At first,
normal?
a little bit. At this point,
Okay.
seeing somebody like that seems a little bit more familiar and routine. Again, I doubt that he has any point of reference for who I am. Somebody that sees a lot of people all the time, probably isn't going to remember every face that they see. But so I've seen him at a number of shows since, obviously, because there's a lot that happened here locally. But yeah, certainly, well, maybe not like over the top. Because to be perfectly honest, I met him 2 weeks after we moved to California before that build, and that build was a year later. I ran into him at a local art store. I was just getting some one-shots, some pinstripe paint.
Jesus.
Yeah, he was really nice.
Wow, that's mad, dude. That's so crazy. It's so crazy. Wow. Well, Chris, I guess we should probably wrap up now. I've probably asked you enough annoying questions. Sorry if it was like I'm like erratic and jumping from one thing to the other, but
Oh man, I feel like we could talk forever. We should definitely do a part 2.
Well, yeah, we should definitely do a part 2. But you're like a proper fucking like professional at this. Like I only just discovered that you were on Matt Farah's podcast.
Yes.
What the fuck? Like
that was cool. That was really
how
cool.
did that
Again,
happen?
Southern California.
Wow.
Just a car community. A lot of the people here know other people. And while I didn't personally know Matt, I knew Jay, who works on the show or helped them get set up in their new studio. And then that's LA. That's just one county up. I drive to LA at least a couple times a week. So just kind of people in the community that know each other that kind of pass along the word. But it's funny you mentioned that because strange as it seems, on Instagram, I'm definitely the person that's behind the camera instead of in front of it, just because I like to keep the focus on the artwork.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I actually love being on camera and I love talking. This is a lot of fun. This is a blast. I realize, half the time I talk to other artists and they're a little bit shy about being in front of the camera or talking, but I absolutely love it. I'm not an introverted artist type at all.
No, clearly not. I mean, I feel really inadequate actually, like speaking to you because you're just so fucking natural. Like you just.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, it's really
You're
cool.
fantastic, man. You can tell you've done this 1,000 times.
No, well, I started like 18 months ago, and I'm totally like to your point about feeling unqualified. Like, I feel so fucking unqualified, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, dude. It's a lot of fun, and like the people that I met. I mean, I just meeting like so many. I've met a lot of guys in I say met online, but a lot of guys in LA. And I really want to come over, dude. I really, really want to come over.
You totally should.
I will at some point. I will. This COVID situation just needs to chill the fuck out a little bit. And,
no kidding.
I'll come over. But so where are you? Are you in Orange County or?
I am, yeah.
Okay, whereabouts?
Costa Mesa.
Wow, cool. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I miss the sun. I miss the ocean. If it wasn't for the family, I think I'd probably be living there right now. I think I'd probably be living there right now. Yeah,
It's
definitely.
important to have your priorities in order, though. So I get it.
Fair enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. So, dude, listen, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you so much for doing it. It's such
Yeah,
short
definitely.
notice.
Thank you so
It
much.
was, no, you're more than welcome. The honor is all mine. I'm, as I said, I know I've already said it to you about 65 times, but I'm a big fan of your work, and
I
I
really
just
appreciate it.
the skill is just absolutely insane. And there's so much, in the OEM world, there's so much like just fluff and bullshit. And I just think that, the craft that you have mastered is just so honest, and it speaks for itself, that there's a lot to be learned from that. And there's a lot of kids that are going to get a lot of value out of, like, discovering you and your work, and
Oh, nice.
and how you got there. That's the thing, dude.
We didn't even get to the nitty gritty of how I got here. We'll have to do that part 2 for sure.
We can do that. We can do that in part 2, dude.
Yeah.
We can do that in part 2. But yeah, thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it, dude.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.